Okay, the clock on the wall
Woodlawn is getting a big.
says 10:30. Okay. Good to see you all. Thanks for getting back in the rhythm. Seems like we kind of got disconnected there. Haven't seen you for a couple weeks. Kind of need to think where we've been. First week was on God owns it all, and He's a generous God and wants us to be generous, reflect His generosity. Week 2, working and earning. God didn't have to set it up where we had to work. He didn't in the Garden of Eden. He didn't with the Israelites. He didn't with the 5,000. They didn't buy their lunch. But working and earning is part of building character and contributing, so forth. And then we talked about giving our last time together, and talked about tithing as a standard, but suggested that there is a better standard called acceptable gift, which is found in the story of Cain and Abel, goes through the Levitical offerings, goes into the New Testament, a gift that is acceptable to God, and tried to open up that a little bit along the way. And today we get into fun, debt, and debt resolution. Okay, so we're getting down to real life here. The other is real life as well, but this is where a lot of us maybe have to figure some things out. So, a couple announcements I need to make. Your book on the way out is Fields of Gold. Andy Stanley, Charles Stanley's son. This is how his mom and dad taught him to give. And there are 3 different P's in there, priority giving, proportionate giving, and then, there's 3. Something, the 3rd P just left.
Purposeful? Purposeful?
No, it is progressive giving. That don't stop. In the slide that we had last week, the tithe is a beginning point, not the finish line. So it's progressive giving and giving. So that book, if you missed the book, check with Ray on the way out. She'll have one for you if you weren't here 2 weeks ago, or if you missed one along the way. You'll be getting some things from her in the email. We're going to talk about debt and so forth today. There's technology tools, one that you'll get from her, and also one, a link to a CD called Generosity 101. So we'll keep giving you things to kind of build your library and your thinking on this whole context of God and possessions, God and money, etc. along the way. So we have coffee out there, I think. So if you didn't get some on the way in, you can feel free to slip out. We'll have a word of prayer first, and then we'll jump into our lesson for today. Father in heaven, thank you for these dear people who are trying to make one more step forward in their desire to obey you and figuring out what you want them to do. And I thank you for having ample material from the Word of God that we can discuss in these sessions. And thank you for their interest and faithfulness, and look forward to another time today of opening your Word and having the Spirit of God apply it to our hearts. And I would pray that for myself as well as the people who are here in class today. So thank you for fellowship and the opportunity to have this discussion and to enrich our lives with it in Christ's name. Amen. So, fun, debt, and debt resolution. As we said, fun is described very broadly. It is more fun to drive here in the rain than to walk in the rain. Okay? It is more fun to have lunch today than to not have lunch today. So it's fun in a broader sense of things that God gives us to enjoy along the way. God intended that much of our money be used for fun. And if you think about the Old Testament, where it's tithing, and by the way, I think I unpacked this, tithing is not just 10% in the Old Testament, but is 10 plus a third of 10, so it's actually 23%, plus some other offerings that they gave, that they were required to give. So the bulk of money is given to us by God for things of enjoyment, and we begin to take on responsibility for finding where that line is in finding our acceptable gift. If you got a chance to look at the Plastic Donuts book, that's explained in there. And if you had any questions on it, give me a call, or maybe we'll have a couple minutes at the end along the way. Our key verse is Romans 12. Don't do it like the world. Do it God's way. Change our thinking. It's good. It's pleasing. It is complete. Cross out perfect. Gives the wrong impression. it is complete along the way. So let's talk about fun. Why does God give us fun money? Money that we can use for our enjoyment, to bring restoration to our body and soul. And that's different for everyone. Some people say, I just want to go out and sit by the lake or sit by the mountain or something, and I just want to be alone. That is restoring to body and soul. Others want to be with people. Let's have family over, because I'm just energized around people. Some are depleted with people, and we'll have all sorts of varieties along the way. But what are we doing with our fun money to keep our soul well and our body well? And that's different for each one of us. Number 2, create memories for us and our family. The church family that Ray and I served in for 4 decades plus had an annual meeting somewhere back and forth across the United States. So as our kids were growing up, because it was a family kind of type of conference with youth and children's activities and so forth, and pastors and lay people going to it, 1,000 people or something, it moved back and forth. So we have, one time we stayed along the Columbia River and woke up the next morning, got in after dark, and they were windsurfing on the Columbia River. I don't know if you know that area, but it's a gorge that runs up through there, and apparently the air from the ocean just came up, and we were right in the middle of a windsurfing tournament. And then we've been in Worcester, Massachusetts, where there's a rebuilt, New England village and so forth, and St. Petersburg, Florida, and San Diego. Memories for our family, and our kids still talk about that. They're grown and have their own children and grandchildren along the way. Create memories for us and our family. Enjoy the beautiful world. I was talking with somebody this week, and he was saying, my wife said to me the other day, there are so many beautiful things here in our own country. We don't need to go outside of our country to go, thank you, budget. That's a good thing. There are many, many beautiful things that God has given us back and forth across our country. To experience new and different things. In the church that we served in Santa Rosa, California, there was a couple there. He was a bank manager, and the wife, Bill and Paula Ferguson, just dear, dear saints. And they came to retirement, and she said, here's what I want to do. I guess it was her bucket list. She said, I want to go bungee jumping off that bridge in, New Zealand, the first place they did bungee jumping. At a 70-year-old. And her husband, Bill, well, no thanks. But anyway, he was a good husband, took his wife there to experience her new and different thing, but take it off her bucket list along the way. To nourish our personalities, preferences, and likes. I've gone for a number of years, and I got interrupted with COVID, to the Wrightsville Prison Ministry down south of Little Rock, and traveled many times with Carl Kimbrough. You know Carl, right? Cheryl Kimbrough. And ridden many times with him, where we go down there and spend a day with a couple hundred prisoners. It's a discipling program there in the Wrightsville facility. And so we have a worship service and a small group, and then another worship service, and spend time with the guys and encourage them. But I've heard Carl tell about what his preference in life. It is visiting abandoned cemeteries and finding out the stories behind it. They go, what? What's interesting about that? He said, he actually bought a Jeep so he could go out across Hill and Dale over through the creek to find these cemeteries that are out on the back of a farm wherever. He said, I went to one, and I saw on a tombstone, a gravesite, that there was a girl, and she was born, and about 19 or 20 years later, she died. And then I found out that in this little town that was there then, there were not many opportunities to find a husband. And so this guy drifted into town, they fell in love, they set a wedding date, and the night before the wedding date, he skipped town. She was so distressed the next morning that she dove headfirst into the well and died. I said, how did you find that out? And I think there's a site called gravesite.com or something like that, where it lists every gravesite that's identified in the United States and the stories behind it. Anyway, whatever turns you on, there's lots of opportunities out there in the rich world that we live in. Fun spending could be broken down into needs and wants, 2 different categories. We need to talk about each of them because God talks about each of them. Needs, food, clothing, and shelter. I'm going to show you a verse of Paul writing about what our needs, but there's something missing And I'm going to ask you why he did not include it. So Paul said, if we have food and clothing, that's enough. We'll be content. What did he leave out? Why did he leave out shelter? What was his rhythm? He's always on the move, right? After he got saved, he was an itinerant missionary.
He had been thinking one of his epistles, he specifically says that I have been without shelter. He has all this list of things that he had endured for the sake of Christ.
Yeah. And he had no shelter of his own, probably. We don't know for sure. But he was on the move, and he gave that up for Christ along the way. Now, some have said the word for clothing is covering, and covering includes roof. So maybe it was covered by Paul along the way. But these are our basic needs. Some to eat, some to wear, something to be sheltered in during adverse weather, whatever, along the way. The breadwinner has a biblical responsibility to provide for the family's needs, and serious words that Paul, the apostle, writes to the young preacher Timothy and to teach to his church in Ephesus. Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Wow. That's critical words that are in there. Now, if we had more time, we could unpack what does it mean to provide for your relatives? How far does that circle go? And secondly, what does it mean for your own household? Does that mean your adult children who have capability to get out and work and so forth? Very interesting verse, but the point is we have a responsibility to take care of our family, or we're not acting in a Christian way at all. Providing includes not putting your family at unnecessary risk. Unnecessary risk. This is Solomon. He understood this long ago. There's another serious problem I've seen under the sun. Money is put into risky investments that turn sour and everything is lost. In the end, there's nothing left to pass on to one's children. There's a Christian consultant down in Dallas. His name is Fred Smith. And somebody came to him and said, Fred, I have about $7 million accumulated, and there's this deal that I found I can double my money in 18 months. What do you think I should do? Fred said, don't. Well, he did and lost it all. Put his family at risk when God had given him that money. So putting your family at risk, should not do that as a responsible person along the way. Needs are constantly changing in our culture. Some of us have children at home yet. What is a need in your child's mind that was not in your mind when you were the same age?
Electronics.
Electronics. What do you mean? Everybody in 5th grade has a phone. I can't go to school without a phone.
Yeah.
That's a need. Yeah. So, yeah. Here's a headline grabber, at least. Mobile phones are more important than sex. And you go down, it's food and car and so forth, along the way. But electronics, I noticed when I was going over the slides yesterday, this is a 10-year-old graph. I should have gone to Statista and tried to get a new one. I would imagine that social media has moved up in the last 10 years incredibly. In fact, heard on the way in on a podcast, a new like Twitter account has just opened up by Meta called Threads, with the whole Elon Musk and censoring and so forth. So it's growing and growing and growing. What does it need? Well, I need to know what's going on out there, maybe. Wants, anything in excess of our needs. God may allow us to have many of our wants, but he has not promised to provide all of them. He's promised to provide our needs. My God will meet your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. And we need to stop there as good fellowship, Bible-informed people, and just go along with this example for a moment. Say that somebody you know has come to know Christ, and you took the responsibility of discipling them, and they're reading in the New Testament, and they come back and they say, I read this verse, it says, my God, I believe in God now, will meet all my needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. What does that mean for a Christian? Is that a credit card I'm going to get with a God credit card? Is it a checkbook? Is it what? What would you say? My God is going to meet all your needs according to the riches of his grace and glory. riches of his glory in Christ Jesus.
Spiritual needs.
Lord.
Spiritual needs.
Spiritual needs? Okay.
For the clothing, food, shelter part, plus our spiritual needs. Yeah.
Certainly spiritual needs. Certainly physical
Our
needs.
essential.
Yeah, our essentials, good. Riches of glory is really what we need to unpack in this verse. And if you look that up, Paul's riches of glory were the people that had come to Christ under his ministry, and he will see in glory. Follow that? So let's put in there the church or believers. My God will meet all your needs according to the believers in Christ Jesus. How did that work out in the New Testament? Acts 2, what does it say? They had all things in common. No one had any need. If there was a need, they went and they sold property and took care of it. So is the church taking care of fellow believers? Do you see that in that verse? It has some implications on it. Yeah, that we have some responsibility to brothers and sisters along the way. Our wants will change as our hearts with God's, as we align our hearts with God's views. As God changes our heart, then our desires change. There's a hymn that I was thinking about, some of us would recall. The things of earth grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. I think that's the second phrase on it. Remember that? The things of earth kind of fade back. And those things which we had to have, maybe earlier in our life, or we didn't get but still are dreaming about it. Psalm 37, I love this verse. Take delight in the Lord, and he'll give you the desires of your heart. What's packed in that verse is our desires change along the way. Used to be we had to have this, we had to have that. But when we find out that in fact there's not fulfillment in some of those earthly things. A verse that almost became our favorite verse, our key verse for this class is 2 Corinthians 4:18. Do not fix your eyes on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporal, and what is unseen is eternal. I just finished, in fact, my wife and I both read a book within the last couple of weeks now. Probably the best thing I've read in 5 or 8 years on how to put into practice the things we talk about in this class. And one of the things they have in there is the difference between, they have 3 categories, the spenders, savers, and a third one I won't get into right now. But most of us in this room are either in a spender category or a saver category. And one of the distinction is a spender only thinks about today. I need this today to make me happy. A saver thinks about, no, I don't have to have this today. I can, because I want to make sure we have money for our kids' education, for retirement, for if we lose the job, whatever along the way. It is a different focus. I hadn't thought about it that way before. Spenders want it now. Savers can put it off. It's called delayed gratification along the way. A very good distinction. Don't fixing our eyes on what is seen or what the Joneses drive next door or the house that they have or my brother-in-law has, the boat, whatever, along the way. I think this guy, and I asked the first class, have you heard anybody say that this guy has the best-selling book in the world right now? I think this is true, if I remember the podcast from this last week. But I like his quote, not Christian orientation, but the will to win is wasted if it's directed toward trivial affairs. We could overlay that on 2 Corinthians 4:18. If our desire is to get all of this stuff, then it's directed toward trivial affairs, because all of the stuff is one day going to go into the dump, and I think I mentioned that the last time that we met. So, debt and borrowing comes from having too much fun along the way. So, some implications of it. 1, debt is considered slavery. The rich rule over the poor, the borrower is slave to the lender. You say, well, I'm not a slave just because I have a credit card. Oh, really? Try not sending the payment in this week. And the master will be knocking at your door if you don't send your mortgage payment or your whatever payment along the way. We become slaves, as Proverbs, Solomon said. This slide is 3 or 4 slides. This quote is 3 or 4 slides long, and it's about instructions to Israel when they were becoming a nation. Do any of you here know what the word Deuteronomy means? Or could unpack it? Yeah, duo, we can see that in the beginning. And the last one is anomy, is really the word for words or sayings. It's the second sayings, where it's going over again for Israel. You're going to become a nation. I'm going to tell you the ways to make it turn out good or not make it turn out good. And I've picked selected verses out of Deuteronomy 28. So I think we can pick this up just through the reading on it. If you fully obey the Lord your God and carefully follow all his commands I give you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations on earth. All these blessings will come on you and accompany you if you obey the Lord your God. The Lord will open the heavens, storehouse of his bounty, send rain on your land in season to bless all the work of your hands. You will lend to many nations, but will borrow from none. Is the U.S. a lending nation or a borrowing nation as we speak? Here it was, right back there in Deuteronomy. We keep going. However, if you do not obey the Lord your God, do not carefully follow his commands and decrees I'm giving you today, all these curses will come on you and overtake you. The foreigners who reside among you, talking to Israel, will rise above you higher and higher. You will sink lower and lower. They will lend to you, but you will not lend to them. They will be the head, but you will be the tail. Is that happening in our country as we speak? Yeah, we sense that, don't we? It's kind of scary. So it's considered a curse. It's the way God set up. Not just individuals, but the way nations operate. Follow him, blessings. Don't do it, you'll be under a curse. That also presumes upon tomorrow. Ray and I were living in California during the 08-09 debacle, the implosion, where housing market went down, tech went down, whole economy went down, and there were some things being presumed. During that period of time, you could get a mortgage loan for 110% of the value of your home. So if you were going to buy a $300,000 home, they would give you a loan for $330,000. And they would say, don't worry about that $30,000. It's going up 15% every year. In a couple of years, you'll be able to sell your house, make money, and move up to the next size house, presuming upon tomorrow. The other presumption during that period of time was in the tech industry, where there was a lot of money being made and a lot of money being spent. There was a presumption, if I lose my job, I can get another one tomorrow because everybody's hiring. Oops, off the cliff. We lived in a newer housing area. I moved there in 99 and been there about 10 years. A third of the homes went vacant during that period of time because people got them repossessed and they could not make the payments, presuming upon tomorrow. James says, listen, you who say today, tomorrow, we'll go on to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, make money. You don't even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You're a mist that appears for a little while, then it vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it's the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast of your arrogant schemes. All such boasting is evil. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. So presuming on the future, when we talk about debt, presumes a lot of things. I will be able to pay it back, et cetera, et cetera. And many people are just not doing well at that in our world today because of addiction to consumption. May deny future opportunities. And here's the crushing thing on this point, and it comes down to the Christian context, where we're going to see a video at the end of a couple from Fellowship that really got it figured out. But they talk about their student debt, almost $100,000 after they both graduated down at the U. And here's the scenario, which is so sad, that if a young couple like that were to go, God is putting on their heart to go to the mission field, and they say, okay, tell me about your finances. Well, we have $96,000 in debt. What is the mission agency interviewer going to say to them?
You get your debt paid off first.
You got to go raise your support. There is no way that you can raise support and then also pay off that student debt. And there's a crisis in recruiting and missions right now, And there are different agencies that are figuring out some payback plan or some find donors that will help pay off or whatever. But denying future opportunities. The other thing, there's a delay in the ability to buy a house. Now, if you're not going to go into missions, you're just trying to get established as a young couple and buy a house, they're going to go $100,000 in debt, student loans, come back when you get that paid off. And we'll see a couple that did it successfully along the way. Debt is simply a symptom of overspending and undersaving. The two categories that book I mentioned. They're spenders and savers. I had a lady come up to me after the last class and she said she had lost her husband and remarried a guy. And her first husband, they just were conservative and so forth. She married a spender and things went bad from there. And there are more of the story I'll mention in a minute, but overspending and undersaving. I saw somewhere I read in the last, a couple of years ago, things that impact your financial well-being through your lifetime. The first one was who you marry, a spender or a saver. And the second one was divorce, because you divide it right in half. And then as I was talking to somebody about that, they said, yeah, and the expenses are double. Now you got to pay for both sides, 2 dwelling places, and 2 this, and 2 that along the way. So it's overspending and undersaving. So, we all have to get that figured out, and it can go south real fast. Here's some statistics. Only 49% of Americans could cover 1 month of expenses if they lost their income. You go, really? Surely not here in Northwest Arkansas. I have talked to people here in our church who live week to week on a paycheck after working for 40 years. They're in their 60s right now. And they have nothing saved. And that's not a one-off story. I've heard it more than once. The Bible doesn't directly give instructions on what debt is permissible and what is not. Therefore, sanctified wisdom is needed. Friesen, I think, used to be a professor at John Brown University, but he uses this term sanctified wisdom. And what is that? That's a combination, he said, of you have a brain, figure out, your finances and debt and budgeting and so forth, but also sanctified as a Christian, you have a brain that's guided by the Word of God. And that's what this class is about for 6 weeks, is putting together sanctified wisdom for financial decisions along the way. Next point, on average, most families in the U.S. will spend 103 to 110% of the income. How do you do that? Go in debt. That's right, Jay. Pull out the card. As one lady said, I love credit cards. They go so much further than cash. Right. That's how you do it. And that's where we are. I'll show you a savings chart here in a minute. Average person, 3 weeks from bankruptcy, little or no money saved, significant debt, totally dependent on next week's paycheck to keep afloat. The average for a boomer couple, by the way, boomers, there are 10,000 boomers a day retiring in going on Social Security right now is another whole story. But the average boomer's savings for retirement is $30,000. Incredible. $30,000. Now, if you, principal in retirement, funding your retirement is a 4% withdrawal on whatever your savings is. Okay, 4 times 3 is 12. That's $1,200. That's $100 a month that they have saved for retirement, plus Social Security, whatever else, retirement. We've not done well. Here's a chart. It's kind of small, but it's personal savings rate. Here's the key to it. The gray bars are recessions. And you can see it goes from 1960 up to 2020 for 60 years. What's the trend right after a recession? What does the savings rate usually do? It goes up. How long does it stay up? Not very long. So you go over to, let's see, if I can get this, yeah. You go over to, what was this spike here? COVID money, pumped in. Our daughter is a HR director for a company in Bentonville, and people came to her and said, we have so much money now, we can't believe it. And she said, well, why is that? Well, we can't go out and eat every night of the week. So that savings went way up because we couldn't spend. How long did it stay up? Until the restaurant's open, and the store's open and so forth, because we are an addicted culture and society. When a person is overspending, undersaving, no surprise, the result is debt. It's not a tool. Debt is not a tool for the consumer, but for the lenders to become wealthy. And that's not always the message you'll get from the lenders. Hey, if you go buy this, da 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 da. Every marketer says that you will look better, you will smell better, you will drive better if you just go have this. You will get a loan for it along the way. Bill Hybels, pastor, Chicago area. Debt comes from wanting more than God's current provision for your life and arranging other ways to get it. Juggling your finances to not be content with what God has given you to live on. And by the way, the basic principle for financial well-being to go through your life is living below your means. If there was one thing I could say capturing all of the class, it would be living below your means. If you do that, you'll be able to finish well and be generous along the way. So, I want to be compassionate, not unempathetic along the way. There may be even people sitting in this room that have debt crisis, and I want to give you some resources along the way. One is Christian Credit Counselors. Is that list in there?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Christian Credit Counselors, as you can see from the name, a Christian organization, and they resolve debt 80% faster. They put you on a plan, you send the money to them, and they work with your MasterCard or Visa or whatever, whoever your credit card along the way. 80% faster is the record that they've established. Recommend them. Number 2, Credit Counselors of Arkansas. They were staffed by Christian counselors. In fact, the director was a Christian, maybe even went to fellowship. But he is retired now, but I had a man in the class who works for the next one I'll put up here. Freedom 5-1 works for Freedom 5-1, who said, yeah, we still recommend Credit Counselors of Arkansas. Freedom 5-1, Chris Haas is a member of, I think, he's a member at Fellowship in Fayetteville. They have an office in Fayetteville, an office up here in Rogers. What they do is incredible. They will sit down with a family, individual, whatever, couple. They will meet 5 times during the year. You'll meet, you have a couple months with assignments to do, come back in 2 months. They do that 5 times during the year. The cost is $250, $50 each time. It's an incredible bargain with 5 personal coaching sessions with one of their counselors along the way. So if you can use that, are in need of it, then there is help out there from a Christian standpoint. When to borrow wisely. When you can purchase an asset that's likely to appreciate. And I put the word likely in there. What is likely to appreciate? You appreciate it, Jay. Huh? Hopefully your home. We go through ups and downs in that. We're at a very high cost time right now. I get very concerned just seeing these 20-year-olds buying houses at the top of the market, and how that's going to work out. But we'll see. I do love what David Ramsey says on this point. Don't buy anything with motors or wheels. It's going to depreciate. So you got cars, trucks, boats, motorhomes, motorcycles. Anything with motors or wheels is a depreciating asset. In fact, I heard a discussion this last week. Any of you know the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Kiyosaki? He divides our thinking about what money we have and where it goes. It either goes to liabilities or it goes to assets. If it goes to liabilities, it's gone and you'll never see it again. That's what we consume, food, clothing, and shelter. If it goes to assets, that's how you build net worth and wealth over a period of time. And so fund your retirement, et cetera, along the way. When the value of an item exceeds the amount of the loan. I heard a ad on the radio about 2-3 years ago from a car dealer over in Tulsa, listening to something or other, and they're saying, come in and buy a new car, don't worry if your last one's not paid for, we'll take care of that loan, you'll get a new car, and your payment will be lower than it is on your current car. What did he not say in that ad?
You're gonna pay five more years on it.
Yeah, you're gonna go from a 36 or a 48 month to a 72 month. Number one, what's next? Yeah, you're gonna be upside down now, which I would say probably, if you listen to Dave Ramsey much, I haven't quite a while, but calls that came into him, I would say 60% of calls are being upside down in my car, my truck, you know. Well, how much is your truck worth? 36,000. What's your loan on it? 48,000. You know, that is just symptomatic across our country. So, and he didn't say what the interest rate was going to be on the new loan either for that 72 months. It's a loser. When the payments don't stress the family budget. I was driving in the San Diego area and listening to Dave Ramsey about 15 years ago. And a guy called in and he said, here's the question my wife and I have. I want to buy a full dress Harley Davidson and my wife doesn't want me to get it. He said, well, how much does a Harley Davidson cost, full dress? Anybody know? I don't know what he said at that time. 38, 42,000. I mean, it's a little pricey. And he said, okay, well, tell me a little bit about your financial situation. And he said to this caller, how much did you make last year? He said, $800,000. And Dave said, oh, did you sell your business or what? He said, no. Well, how much are you going to make this year? $1.1 million. He said, buy the bike. You know, it's just chump change. You know, what's 40,000 out of 1 million? So doesn't stress the family budget. If he had said, I make $62,000, I want to spend $38,000 to buy a motorcycle, it wouldn't do it. So you have to, everything has kind of been a relationship along the way. Okay, solicitation for credit card loans. 88% of college graduates have credit card debt upon graduation, but here's the more disturbing fact. 19% of people who file for bankruptcy are college students. So you have 1 out of 5 college students who start their life a financial failure. That is so sad. And why is that? One, they go through 12 years of school. The family sat here, it's a boy and a girl, a mom and a dad at the first class. And we were talking about this. And I said to the boy who looks, maybe early high school, I said, have you ever had any class on personal finance in school? No. So our education system doesn't do it. You got parents who are not in control, in a sanctified wisdom way, not teaching their kids. And you end up with a 1 out of 5 failure.
That is offered though.
I think it's required.
Well, it depends where. This is Harbor. I said, you go to Arkansas school. Where do you go? Harbor. Huh?
He has to have it. He just hasn't had it yet.
They do have a personal finance course.
We had 5 kids who went through this district and they all had personal
Well,
finance.
I
They've changed the need for it, but yeah, for a long time it was not
And once
required
these
or
kids
not.
get out of high school, the credit card offers just pour
Oh,
in.
that's horrible.
I
Yeah.
know. It's like they knew
I've
my
thrown
son
away 4
graduated.
or 5
I
kids and
know.
you see them.
And
We
thankfully
get
they
them
come to the
all.
house and do the same thing.
Yeah.
So, on being in high school, our grandson, who is now graduated college, back years ago, I said to him, hey, what are you studying? He said, personal finance. He was in like 8th or 9th grade, 7th grade maybe. And I go, well, tell me what they teach you. Well, how to do a checkbook and how to make a deposit and how to have a budget. And I said, was there anything said about charitable giving? I didn't even say, Christian. No. So you're taught spend it all. It's all yours to spend. Well, probably should expect nothing more. Although philanthropy is the secular term for generosity. It's charitable giving, usually Christian. It's philanthropy is secular. So, marketing even to children, again, solicitation, as you mentioned. Mattel had a little plastic cash register, and you could put in some numbers, 143, then push, to total up, whatever. And you had a little Mattel credit card you would swipe. And what came up in the window every time you swiped it? Accept it. Programming, a 3-year-old, you got it along the way. It was on the side of cereal boxes for a while. Kids' cereal boxes, credit card. Here's the trend that's happening now. 2020, 3 years ago, 748 billion. March of this year, 986. So what's it gone? 750 to 986. $230 billion added on. And I heard something recently that millennials are just going crazy with credit card charges now. Like you're never going to be able to pay it off. It's gone up like 28% in a quarter or something. And people are trying to figure out why is that. The American Rescue Plan, where we saw that peak for COVID, all the money there, but it's back to the current lowest savings rate since 1959 because we are addicted to have it and have it now in our culture. So I disagree with Dave Ramsey that nobody should, his stance is nobody should have a credit card. Cut them up, figure out another way to do it. Actually, I'll confess, my wife and I have had credit card the whole time we've been married, but we pay it off every month. Do you know what the credit card's called, Don and Ray Reed? There's a name for us.
Money losers.
Deadbeats. Because they don't get a dime from us. Am I crying myself to sleep over that? No, because they get their 3 or 4% on every transaction that goes through. But that, we're beating the system along the way, and I have no regrets. It's
Can I ask
better.
you a question?
Huh? Sure.
Do you believe in like when you earn air miles or
Okay.
points?
Yep, we're coming to
Is that a
that.
scam? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, good question, but it's another point down, I think. Good. It's a better way to keep records. We love it, for the records to come. And my wife, checks off the MasterCard and makes sure there are no extra charges and they all line up and whatever. They keep records. It's a more secure way. It used to be there was a difference between credit cards and debit cards, but I think you have the same assurances, so you don't have to have a credit card to return things and dispute a charge or something along the way. I want my children to learn to handle money, so I got them a credit card. No. I had a lady in the back row ask a question at the end about that, which I didn't have a good answer for. I got to look up this week about putting your child on your credit card to build up their credit. So we got into a discussion. What are you teaching your child to do? To live on credit. Huh? I'm sorry.
It only works if they pay you back.
Well, and another lady who sat in the back row said, okay, she said, I'm a teacher, an 8th grader, so I think it was 8th graders, and she said, we're talking about credit cards or something, and she said, how many of you have your own credit card? A whole bunch of kids raised their hand. And she said, who pays the credit card? And 2 kids said, I don't know. So, again, what are we teaching them? Okay, I think we got, okay, here are the cash back and the rewards. Okay, oop. I want a credit card for the cash back and rewards. Yes, as long as you're paying it off. And 2, yes, if you can find how to get the rewards.
Yeah.
We had a Delta card for a while. I mean, to try to find where that button was to redeem the miles and so forth, it is just, more difficult, more layers back into the system. So, and I'm sure some credit cards are probably better on that, but it's not a scam necessarily unless you are motivated to purchase, to run your miles up or something and buy something you didn't need. Then that's,
Like, if you look at the average transaction size paid with cash, paid with card, like the average, I used to sell Premier Jewelry a long time ago, and
Okay.
they tried to get us to get people to use a credit card, because the average purchase, if they were paying cash or check, was $23. If they used a credit card, the average purchase was $89.
yep, that's it.
And so that is one reason why Dave Ramsey says avoid it altogether, because it's too tempting to say, oh, I'll just spend a little more this month, I can catch
Yeah.
up next month.
Yeah.
And people get caught in that trap.
Yeah, it's a known psychological fact. If you have to pull at the cash register or Walmart or wherever you're online, you have to pull out and give them cash. It hurts more than swiping.
Bye, Uncle Benjamin.
That's right. Benny is gone. Okay, bottom line, if a credit card allows you to purchase that which you cannot afford with cash, you need to stop using that credit card. You know, if you cannot self-discipline yourself to pay it off every 30 days, then you need to stop. And I won't be looking at your mail, but my recommendation, sanctified wisdom. Car payment trap is probably the second biggest thing after mortgage, and we'll talk about mortgages in a minute, is the car. When I started teaching it, the average payment was $495 a month. And it was like 48 months. Now it's $677 for 64 months. Cars are an addiction as well in our society. I talked to two guys this week who are maybe going to get into generosity teaching and Align and so forth. A young businessman, and both of them mentioned, and we were not even talking about it. They said, my wife and I don't buy new cars. And we were not talking about cars. They were talking about, teaching and principles in here and so forth. Because do you know the percentage that you give away when you drive over the sidewalk from the dealership on a new car? 15 to 17%. So you take what's 50 times $50,000 car, 15, what is that? $6,500 you just threw in the gutter when you went over. Over a period of a lifetime, that's a huge, huge dent in your net worth and wealth. And we'll talk about how to get out of it. Anyway, if you put that car payment in savings it's just at 5%, moderate, for 40 years, you'd have $1 million retirement if you could just wean yourself off if you're a new car person. Escape plan, number one, keep your present car 3 years beyond the end of the car loan payments. If you have a new car, just drive it for 3 more years. Cars today, unless you're, traveling on the road, 10,000 miles a month, cars will last, 150,000, 60,000 without any major mechanical things happening probably. Next, during that time, continue to make the same payment into a car savings account. We did this a few decades ago when I was, the ministry that I was in was paying me mileage, figured out what I was paid for mileage, half of it took to just keep the car going. We put a half into savings, started way back, and had bought cars for cash since that time. But you just take that money and then roll it over, and as soon as you buy one, then you're putting in for the next one in that car savings account as a practice. Purchase all future cars. The euphemism, the soft words are previously owned, because you can't say used cars anymore, because that's negative along the ways. So, but you'll be able to buy a 2 to 3 year old low mileage, dependable car that will meet your family needs. Somebody in talking about car purchasing said that you need to think of 2 things when you're going to buy a car. One is, how much am I willing to pay for transportation, and how much am I willing to pay for emotion? Okay, that's a good distinction. There's a 2-year-old car, get your kids to school or get you to go see the grandkids, wherever you are in life, better than a new car, better than a 2 or 3 year old car? No, it'll get you there and back. But is it emotion? Oh, I want to be known as a guy that has a new car, whatever. And again, one of the guys I met with this week said, my wife said to me the other day, how does that couple next door to us, they got 2 new cars in the driveway, and they just bought a new house. This couple just bought a new house. They both have very good jobs. They have no debt. Maybe they have a mortgage now, I'm not sure. And they said, we got into a discussion because we know what jobs they have. Said, well, they're probably just making the minimum payments each month and so forth. And that's what our culture is about. Impressions and what the neighbors think of me, et cetera, along the way. Borrowing for a mortgage, only a 15-year loan, make extra principal payments. And again, that's what my wife and I had practiced. Whatever the payment was on a 15-year loan, we would put in another $200 or $300 every month to pay that off early. And again, that lady who sat on the back row came up afterwards. She said, my husband, first husband and I were savers. We were doing well. My husband died. I married a guy. He was a spender, and we were a disaster financially. And then she said, we separated and so forth, but said we refinanced, got a 50-year loan, and I just paid off the house. Now, and she said, that is such a relief and a freedom that we have of getting out from under a mortgage. Here are the stats on a 15 versus a 30-year mortgage. $300,000 home, 20% down, 60,000 to avoid PMI, and you get a mortgage for 240. And here's the difference on the amount you're going to pay over the lifetime of that loan. If it's a 15-year, the bottom line there, total mortgage is 309 that you have paid. If it's a 30-year loan, $412,000, just by disciplining to have a little higher mortgage payment for a lesser number of years. You say, well, I can't afford a house, that house at 15 years. Well, that may be God's sanctified wisdom to you. You shouldn't be in that house. You know, is that house going to take care of you and your family as well if you could drop down to what you can afford for a 15-year mortgage? Accelerated repayment plan. This is classic. Dave Ramsey or Chris Haas or whoever lists all your debts, including personal loans. A lot of people say, I don't know how much I own. I just make the minimum payments every month. No, get them all down so you see what it is. Could scare you. Establish a $1,000 emergency cash fund. We talked about that in short-term savings because most people get into credit card debt when they do not have an emergency fund. This is where you begin to get out of it. Commit to paying off the smallest debt in record time. That's counterintuitive. Our intuition says we pay off the one with the highest interest rate. That is not the best way to go. It is more motivating. Say you have 5 credit cards or 3 or whatever. Okay, you got one that's the smallest. You say, I'm going to knock that one out first. We're going to work at it and take care of it. You get that one knocked out, you're down now to only 2. You go, wow, that really feels good. And that'll motivate you more. So don't start with a high interest. Don't worry about the interest. Make minimum payments and get that little one paid off along the way. Convert to cash only. If you cannot discipline yourself to pay off your credit cards, etc. And produce extra income. A slide's coming up, which is not in your book. I just found it last couple 3 weeks ago. It comes out of NerdWallet. If you're not aware of that website, they have some pretty good financial counsel. This is 7 of the best apps to make money while working at home, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to take a picture with your phone, you can do that. It's not in the book. Ray will not send it to you. I have not vetted every one of them, but NerdWallet has. It says these are not scams. These are ones where you could make some money at home, et cetera, et cetera. And I did look at a few of them and talk about, how long will it take you to get paid? How long will it take you to get started? So it's probably worth looking at if that could help you out along the way. Everybody got what they need? You're still ready? Got them? Good job. Okay, this is the couple. Listen to their story. Brian and Megan Denman. They're Fayetteville people. We're up here at Rogers until Fayetteville opened, but here we go.
We graduated from college at the University of Central Arkansas about 2 years ago now, and whenever we got out of school, we had significant student loan debt, and it was close to 6 figures. It was right at $96,000 that we had in student loan debt, and we knew right off, it's like, okay, we need to do something about this. So initially we did the Dave Ramsey class, and we just kind of learned then that, hey, we need to be putting more money toward our loans and trying to have that as a focus and as a goal, and so we did, and so we got on track with that. And since then, that's been about 2 years. We have it down to about $18,000 now, and in another 5 months, we'll have it completely paid off.
One thing we learned just through Chris Haas and his ministry was that there are over 2,000 verses in the Bible on finances. So we know that this is something that's close to God's heart, and we know it's important to us as well. And it's definitely something that can make or break your marriage. And we really want to have a hold on finances in our marriage so that we can grow, so that we can give, and really put it towards the right things. The last day of the month, we sit down and go through, look at what we spent where, because on the first day of the month, we use cash to pay for most of our things, and so we take that cash out on the first day of the month, so we try to be prepared. It was definitely harder at first, those first few months, even the first year we did this. It was a struggle. It was going back and forth and really trying to tweak things and see really where our money was going, So it's been a growing process and still is, but it definitely gets easier. So I would encourage anybody who's trying the budget to really just try to stay consistent with it and work together, because it takes both of you on the same page in order to make it work.
It's kind of fun targeting those loans and the debt paying off together, because we're able to look at it each month and say, hey, I worked a little extra, you worked a little extra, hey, we're getting this check, we can put this towards a loan, and we can watch that number go down of what we actually owe on our debt, which is really fun. And I think it's good just working together, and important working together on our finances, because it brings us closer, and it's something that you're not going to do with necessarily like a boyfriend or girlfriend, but as that intimacy as a spouse, of being able to sit down and do that together and really plan with our finances and look towards what are our financial goals.
How old is that video?
It is probably
pre-COVID?
half a dozen years.
Yeah, because COVID really set people behind on student debts.
Yeah.
They didn't have to pay. And it's starting up again in October.
Well,
I believe.
Yeah, they lost the Supreme Court ruled against the forgiveness, and now they're working on some other stuff. But yeah, the student loans are going to have to be paid back, is the way it stands right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm so proud of Brian and Megan, for working out a plan, getting out of debt. And by the way, Brian's going to become one of the new elders for fellowship, is one of our young leaders coming up. So you'll see that name some more.
Yeah, in 2 years.
Huh?
In 2 years.
In 2 years,
They
not
got it
good.
down to 18. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And they had an efficiency apartment. They didn't eat out. They didn't go to movies. They just paid off debt. One is an OT and one is a PT, occupational therapist. One is a physical therapist. That's what they talked about, taking extra shifts or taking, somebody wants a day off, whatever. So, yep. Okay, a couple things just to wind up here. Remove all debt except your house mortgage in 24 to 30 months. Your house mortgage. Commit to paying off the mortgage as early as possible. I did talk to somebody this last week who said, I'm not going to pay off my mortgage. The rate on it is 1.99%. I can make more in a savings account. Well, so you work out the details. Sanctified wisdom. Can't recommend it too highly. Be debt-free, the easiest path to financial freedom. Not giving it away in interest for your credit cards, for your mortgage, maybe. Your paycheck is the most valuable asset. Don't lose it to creditors. Being in control, telling your money where to go rather than wondering where it went. Saving and investment are not that complicated, just difficult to keep the discipline in the world where we are marketed so much along the way. Couple things, debt consolidation. We can take our 5 cards and consolidate into one. 78% of people who do that fail to resolve the debt problem. They're still using their credit cards. They only deal with the symptom of many payments. Not recommended. Bankruptcy is not recommended. You're asking somebody else to pay for your spending excesses. God has something to say about it. We'll see in a moment. Each type asks somebody else to forgive part or all of your debt. Chapter 11, chapter 13 doesn't make any difference. Be careful about receiving counsel, especially from non-Christians. They will often prematurely recommend bankruptcy. You just need to declare bankruptcy. You'll never get out of these debts. I listened to a call-in program this last week, and there was a single mom, and she had something like $300,000 in debt, but was determined to let God help her work that out. And she got like $240,000 forgiven on it, and worked to pay the other 60, and was calling the program just to tell how God worked it out. And it is possible. It is possible. Let God do something. What does God say about bankruptcy? The wicked borrow and do not repay, but the righteous give generously. I mean, what side of that equation do you want to be on? Wicked, evil, or generous? Some exceptions maybe if there's, financial disaster or medical bills that are just crippling a family. May look for some relief, but be open to how God will provide, as with that lady. Co-signing. The words are a little archaic here, but do not be a man who strikes his hand in pledge, as saying, I'll pay for my friend. puts up security for debts. If you lack the means to pay, Solomon's saying, your very bed will be snatched out from under you. And again, Proverbs, one who has no sense shakes his hands in pledge and puts up security for a neighbor. Now, the next slide I'll show you. If your brother-in-law who wants to buy that jacked up pickup or a boat, if the bank has said, I don't think he's going to pay that off, why would you think he's going to pay it off if you sign for it? And you'll see what the statistics are. 50% of all bank loans with co-signing end up being paid by the co-signer. Do not co-sign. Do not co-sign. If you want to go worse, payday loans, storefront loan companies, 75%. If the professionals have said they're not going to pay for it, why would you think your brother-in-law is going to pay for that boat? You want to buy him a new boat or a new pickup? Take the risk. And we're at the end. So, any questions or comments on fun and spending and debt resolution and the challenges thereof? Next week, we talk about investing. That came about because some millennials, over 161, probably 2 years ago now, I used to have session 5 was on retirement planning and gave statistics and talked about planning. They go, you tell us to plan, but you didn't tell us at all how to do it. So I put together a financial investing class, which I'm very excited about. I've taught it in a number of cycles. But if you're a novice investor and go, I don't even understand investing, it will be helpful. If you're an experienced investor, my wife and I have been investing for a lot of years, decades. And so I learned things in putting that together. So I'm excited about it. Thank you for being here. I'll have a word of prayer and see you next week. Okay? Father in heaven, thank you for the good attention of these people, faithfulness in coming in middle of summer and so forth. And thank you that we could talk about real things in life like spending and credit cards and debt and getting out of debt, because that's a part of where we live and it's a part of what you have asked us to manage. So I would pray for sanctified wisdom for each one of us, starting with Ray and myself, and going into each household represented here. Thank you that we can talk about it. And I pray as even in the car going home, things that might have been triggered through the conversation might be a topic of conversation through the week, and then as we come back again next week. So thanks for your grace upon us in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much. Always good to see you.